Hello, I want to welcome you to the Our Revolution Helena TV program here on Helena Civic TV. My name is Frank Kremkowski. I'm one of the members of Our Revolution Helena. We are a group that was inspired by the campaign of Senator Bernie Sanders back in 2015 and 2016, and we've continued as an affiliate of the national group called Our Revolution, which Bernie Sanders started. Our goals are to ignite a true political revolution where people reclaim their democracy in our country, where the ever-increasing income inequality ends, where health care, housing, and food security is available to all. Well, we're quite away from all of that, but we are here working as a group that has met almost every week since May 31st of 2015, and now we meet every 2 weeks for business meetings as Our Revolution Helena. We've had lots of speakers at our Revolution Helena meetings, and today one of the speakers that we've had at our Revolution Helena meetings is our honored guest. We're honored to have her as our guest, Representative Ann Dunwell, who's the representative of House District 84 for East Helena and Helena. I want to welcome you very much, Ann.
Oh, Frank, thank you. The honor is all mine.
Well,
thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. You know, Frank is extremely humble. He's a member of our Revolution Helena. You are its leader, and you are a primary leader in Montana's progressive efforts and movements. So hats off to you. And I do want to thank also HCTV for the opportunity to appear here today.
Well,
also.
Thank you very much, Ann. We have lots of things to talk about today, but one of the things that we're energized about is the coming Montana legislature beginning on January 7th here in Helena. And a lot of us across the state have been looking forward to the challenges that will occur for anybody who wants some basic economic justice, social justice, health care. And I know that you, Ann, have championed so many of these issues. So we're interested in hearing your perspective on what kinds of things we should really think about carefully as we look towards the 2019 Montana legislative session.
Well, that's very interesting. You know, Frank, you say that. I just wrote a birthday card to a colleague of mine, Representative Andrea Olson, and it's a picture of the buffalo and something that a former Democratic caucus chair said to us. I can't remember, I think it was the 2015 session. She said, "Be like the buffalo when you're in the minority. Head down together into the storm." And I don't think this is hyperbole. It will be a storm when it comes to social justice, civil rights, human rights, economic opportunity and equality for all Montanans. I hope we can rely on people engaging, coming to the People's House, calling me and my colleagues in the Helena delegation, and having your voices heard. That's going to be so important to retain our democracy and our basic foundations of freedom. I know people are busy, but you could send emails, calls, or show up en masse to the People's House. It's so important. I know I'm a Democrat. I think most people realize that. It's going to be very, very important now more than ever during this time of civil discourse in this country, now more than ever, to work collaboratively and understand that all legislators on both sides of the aisle in a citizens' legislature are here because they believe in improving their communities and giving their constituents a quality of life. And if we understand that and look at where we can identify common ground rather than dividing ourselves and playing these political games, I think we can move forward with something. And I can tell you from our delegations and my Democratic caucus's priorities, we want to make sure Medicaid expansion can continue. 96,000 Montanans have been able to get access to health care since we passed Medicaid expansion in 2015. And that includes 5,500 people right here in Lewis and Clark County. So health is so important to our productivity, our ability to just enjoy our quality of life. Not to mention the economic boost Medicaid expansion has brought to Montana. So that's going to be a priority. And also, folks out there understand that big cuts in human services programs were made over the past couple of years. We need to not just restore those cuts, but put resources into looking at the future, the long game, how we can improve some of these systems that could use repair, our mental health system, our system for people with disabilities and others. How can we improve them moving into the future sustainably and make long-term public health system change? And then finally, another priority is part of how we do that is we need to look at our tax policy, our policy that fuels our public revenues that belong to all of us, that fund essential public services, police, fire, health care, parks, infrastructure, education. Those are shared benefits that our public revenues fund. So we need to update our antiquated state tax system. We have fees that haven't been increased in decades, not indexed to inflation. We've got some loopholes that frankly corporations enjoy that the average working folks don't. We need to fix that and look at making our tax system more fair.
Well, you set up a scenario of some real challenges with Medicaid expansion or continuation of that, with changing the tax structure to make it more fair and for making sure that the most vulnerable of our citizens have enough services. Disabled persons, the most vulnerable, the least of our brethren is the term that those of us from the Christian tradition use. But it's going to be a challenge because I can recall back in 2015 when Medicaid expansion was passed, it was passed by one vote. And now there are various people who are saying they might vote for it again, but they have reservations and they want to do things that would seem to be not in the spirit of caring for the most vulnerable people in our society. And so those challenges are really real ones. And on that point of the services cutback that occurred these last couple of years, I can remember the heart-breaking testimony back in August when the interim Committee on Children and Family Services met, and people talked about the cutbacks in case management services and services for disabled persons, mental health services. And who knows how many unknown tragedies occurred during that time, but you would think the common good, like care for the rights of all, would be the basic ideas of both Republicans and Democrats. And so it's going to be interesting to see how you can work with people as you do in your gentle and compassionate way with people on both sides of the aisle.
Well, yeah, first of all, Frank, and thank you for that insight. I do believe my brethren and sisters on the other side of the aisle care about the least of our brothers and sisters. I really do believe that. I do believe, I do believe, I do believe. I think that's a line out of our one of the renditions of our Christmas carol. It's just sometimes we differ in policy how we're going to get there. I attended a conference recently, and the new president of the Senate, Scott Sales, was a speaker, and he did say he's pretty resigned to the fact that Medicaid expansion will pass. He added he wants to make sure we have some sideboards like work requirement and drug testing, illicit drug testing. And what I say to that is most people on the expanded Medicaid in Montana are already working. It's something like, I want to say 80%, 85%, and the others just can't. They're suffering from cancer or other disabilities that would set them back if they did work. So it's already happening. I don't think we need to add more administrative tasks for our good government of public employees, and us. We are the government. The other thing, drug testing. What is that? Is that a test? Is that a worthy test of the poor? If we're going to require illicit drug testing for receiving government subsidies, public assistance, then how about farmers and ranchers who get farm subsidies? How about some of the corporations who get tax breaks, tax treats? That's, any way you slice it, that's a government subsidy. To reach a goal, it's a government subsidy. Do we require those folks to endure drug testing? I don't think so. So I think we need to be reasonable with this.
And that's an interesting perspective, because the basic value of our Revolution Helena is fairness and justice. And so we'd say, let's apply the rules fairly. And if someone is getting a benefit, we should say, yes, do they need it? Of course. And if you need public assistance benefits, it's because you're poor. And it's because maybe you've just come out of a domestic violence situation and have no income. It's not because you're trying to rip off the system. I remember back in 1995, there was a study of the Montana welfare system and showed that there was very little fraud, if any, on the part of recipients. There was fraud on the part of people who were getting money off of those benefits that were being provided to the poor. But that there weren't people who were on there for years and years and years. The average length of stay back in 1995 on welfare was 18 months. Right. And those people got very little assistance from the state to get back on their feet and do well. And so the idea of justice and fairness and compassion for our brothers and sisters, and to base those sideboards on facts, not mythologies about how people are trying to game the system.
May I?
Sure.
Not to interrupt, but may I just add something? We have with the law that passed in 2015 for Medicaid expansion, the HELP Act, there is an asset test requirement to make sure your assets meet these criteria or don't meet these criteria. Well, of the 96,000 Montanans who receive expanded Medicaid, two individuals were identified by the Department of Revenue as maybe not passing the asset test, having more assets. And so I think we need to be reasonable and look at what resources did we ask our public employees to expend sleuthing this out, when we know most Montanans are honest, forthright, and humble in receipt of this hand up is what it is. Like you said, folks don't stay on the assistance forever, gives them an equal opportunity to succeed.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you mentioned, though, is that tax structure. And it's a little bit of a different topic, but the idea of fairness there is crucial as well. Because we know that the public, our community, has to help pay for the services that our most vulnerable citizens need. But we want those taxes to be fair. And I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about your ideas for increasing some revenue from sources that haven't been paying their fair share, or have maybe in the past been paying their fair share but are no longer paying their fair share.
Oh, so I know we only have 20 minutes for this. There's a lot to be done, so let's roll up our sleeves. Back in 2003, the legislature enacted what I thought was a very regressive tax policy, in that it eliminated the top income bracket. And in a sense, what we have now since then is that Montanans who earn minimum wage pay the same tax rate, state income tax rate, as people who are multimillionaires. And to me, that's not equitable. We have seen the harmful effects fiscally and in folks' well-being as a result in Montana since then. We've seen our property taxes increased astronomically, simply because we need to pay the bills for essential public services. And at the end of the day, oftentimes it gets passed on to residential property owners, and I see that. So maybe adding another tax, adding back that tax bracket. Whether it's going to happen this session, don't know, but we can certainly start moving the needle and having the conversation in that direction. I also have a bill, I call it Climate Cost Community Dividend. It actually adds carbon dioxide, a major contributor to climate change. It adds carbon dioxide to an already existing bill on Montana's books that levy a fee for greenhouse gases on some of the Montana's big emitters, some of the electrical generating facilities, the refineries that emit quite a large amount of CO2 into the atmosphere and affect our public health, our economy, on and on, our national security, on and on. That would generate, I was astounded by what it would generate, $210 million a year, not a biennium, but a year. And the law's already on the books. It just doesn't have CO2 in it. And because back when the law was passed in the early 70s, CO2 was not a pollutant. Who knew? So there's that. I have a couple of a tourist tax bill. And the reason I'm carrying so many bills is I'm honored to serve on the House Tax Committee. I'm also on the House Human Services Committee and Legislative Administration, but House Tax and House Human Services are Class 1 Monday through Friday committees. One's in the morning, one's in the afternoon. So folks, please show up and testify for some of these important issues, because it is our tax revenue, our public revenue, that funds our essential services that we all benefit from.
And all those new revenues will be used for what kinds of purposes? I mean, the $210 million that you're talking about, what could those be used for?
Well, the bill as drafted and granted, generally there are amendments, is drafted 50% of that, half will go to the general fund. The other, I have funding streams to replenish, for example, one of the funding streams that's dwindling in the interest from the coal trust that funds human services, public services, social programs, And that money currently is fueled by coal money. So the coal we know is going away, so the money is dwindling. So that fund is dwindling. Another funding stream I have is to enhance Department of Environmental Quality's air quality division, I think it is, and oversight for some of the cleanup. A very important funding stream is to go to communities, transition communities, energy transition communities, such as coal strip. I mean, that jumps out at everybody's mind, but right here in Lewis and Clark County, half of my district is still designated as a Superfund cleanup site. Also, there are some areas that relied on lumber that aren't getting the revenue from lumber that we once did. They're transition communities, so this money would fund them. That's why I call it a community dividend. So some of the money goes back to folks, and because we all breathe the smoke. You know, from 2 summers ago, we are impacted health-wise, public health-wise, economically, and socially, and our agriculture, our national security, all of that. It impacts us. So the public deserves to be compensated in some way.
Yeah, and as you said, people are busy, but these challenges that you've mentioned and the needs that you've identified seem to be ones that relate to those basic concerns that we have for our brothers and sisters and those who are especially vulnerable, and for all of us to need clean water and clean air. And people say they're busy, but I recall the words of Henry David Thoreau back in the day. I wasn't there then, but I'm getting older, but not quite that old. He said, busy, busy, busy. Everybody's busy. The question is, what are you busy about? And if we're not busy about the issues that you've been talking about, especially as they affect the most vulnerable, then we're missing some humanity that we need to recover and say, I know that a lot of people say legislature is just a bunch of politicians and they don't care about us. And I think
we work for you.
I think that's clearly the case. Yeah. And so our time is up, but I want to thank you for your thoughtful presentation about what you're looking forward to in the legislature, the challenges there, and what you're hoping to accomplish. And I hope that us in our revolution, Helena, can be participants in that great challenge and endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. So thank you very much for watching our Revolution Helena's television show. We'll be back soon, and if you want to join us, we meet every 2 weeks. Our next meeting is December 27th, and we'll have good friends and good people there for you to meet, and you can join us in our work. Thank you very much.